For this special episode of Back to the City, I'm very excited to be joined by two of my colleagues at the U of M, Michael Glope and Meredith Gill, who are two members of the band E. And this is in the run-up to the record release at the Eagles. You're playing with Weta and Half Tramp, PV Glob, and also I saw an announcement on the day that we're tracking this interview that the brilliant and mysterious Kissin' Alleys, in the words of Michael,
yes.
will be there. So mysterious, I haven't heard of Kissin' Alleys before. What will Kissin' Alleys be doing?
That's the stage name for Zach Zimmerman. Since he was in a black box for the White Page performance, I decided to sort of help maintain that identity. Yeah, he'll be doing some visuals for the show.
Speaking of the White Page performance, that's the other thing that we're going to be talking about today. I was able to get some footage of that show. So we'll be looking back at that show. We're between two biggie shows, really. We're looking back at the previous one, which was on the 50th anniversary. It was a performance of Terry Riley's Keyboard Study No. 2. So we're going to be hearing some of that performance in this episode. Who was Terry Riley, and how did you decide to do a performance of that?
I guess the idea started with Muriel and I. We were working on some duo material, and we realized I play the electric organ. So I play this ace-tone electric organ, which is a Japanese organ from the 1960s. And we were playing with melodies and little cells of material that overlap. And we kept coming back to Terry Riley as a common influence for both of us. And Terry Riley is sort of a kind of grandfatherly figure from early minimalism of the 1960s.
Yeah.
And has long been a figure who has been inspiration to many, and an astonishing keyboard player. Not often talked about, as people talk about his composition in C, the participatory piece, a lot, but he's an amazing keyboard player. And I had seen him play in Los Angeles during the winter at the Museum of Contemporary Art downtown. And he's in his 80s now, and he's an incredible player. And so this was something that Muriel and I, in doing E as a flexible lineup, and she and I had just been working on some E material, just the two of us, and we had been listening to a lot of Terry Riley, and I had this idea, why don't we do a keyboard study, this piece that is, he used as a template for a few different pieces, and try to do it's intended for one keyboard player. And we were discussing what would it mean to have multiple players, and potentially on different instruments. And we explored the idea of Muriel playing saxophone and decided we would try an unusual, challenging performance of multiple keyboards.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Playing this keyboard study. So it's, I mean, it is a performance of the piece. It's also, it's a very open piece. There's a few different cells of material that you can do different things with.
And it doesn't have a score, it has directions.
Yeah, or it's just like a part. It's not, it's part of this 60s vibe of experimenting with notation, where you think about the Fluxus event score, these kinds of things that were influential for Lamont Young, Yoko Ono, George Maciunas.
Can you explain what the Fluxus event?
The idea of instead of using conventional notation where you play the piece from beginning to end, just having a little element or a sort of recipe, or using language to tell you, okay, do this action, pour a bucket of water into another vessel, and really using the musical score, the idea of the musical score, to create some kind of experimental event. I think that's one of the influences on Riley's decision to make this, as you said, like not a conventional score, something that's kind of a game, a set of musical materials that you can build out and play in different ways. And so our idea was to kind of try to give ourselves the challenge of having 3 people play it with a shaker in the background.
Yes, exactly.
And then we played it actually, I believe, the next day, and we had 4 people on it the next time.
On keys?
Yeah.
4 people on keys?
Yeah, we added Travis,
twice.
so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where was that you played it?
At the Eagles.
Oh, nice. The Eagles again, good place.
Yeah.
So as we can see, there were 2 people. So this is my DIY green screen, just here. So and here is a still of the performance.
Right.
So I believe we have Meredith and Michael and Meredith, I think, on this side, and then Marielle, and then Orchard Thief.
Sam.
Sam, yeah.
Yeah, Sam Olstead.
On the shaker.
Right.
Next
He deserves a prize for that.
So how did you go about deciding to play the game in this way? I mean, you're facing each other as opposed to facing the audience too, and the shake is a significant component, prize-deserving component. How did you go about making all of these decisions?
I don't remember specifically, but I do remember when we were trying to figure out how are we going to line up the keyboards, and it seemed like we wanted some kind of like not very much space between us, and we wanted some symmetry there.
Right.
So you're like one entity to some extent, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're trying to fuse into a single stream.
Yeah.
And the challenge, how do you synchronize what's supposed to be a solo piece and these little melodic cells, really, that Terry Riley wrote, are very difficult to play.
Yeah.
As we discovered, they're kind of they're muscle benders and mind benders at the same time. Yeah. They're kind of, it's sort of a dizzying experience. So I think that we added Sam as a practical element to try to, because you still want to create a sense of hypnosis, even though we're not shooting for some kind of complete rhythmic synchronicity. It's going to be an organic piece.
Yeah.
We wanted it to feel loose, human, organic, all of those things.
It sounds a lot better with a timekeeper. Also.
Yeah, I think that with multiple keyboards it helps fuse it.
The band began, if I understand correctly, with you and Travis doing experimental work on 2 keyboards.
Right.
Then there's also Marielle on horns and all keys, and Crystal on bass and vocals. I understand she's going to be tracking some vocals for the record that will come out next year.
She is.
I think she might be doing it right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you're on drums. So you have a band. Maybe that's the answer why you decide to have it be collaborative. But was there any other reason why you thought, let's take this piece and make it no longer be, a piece for one keyboard player?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. For me, I think Meredith, we're always trying to keep things open, right? I mean, we never want it to feel like E is a project where we're writing songs and playing them. We're also people in different combinations.
Yeah.
We're trying to find ways to keep it all mobile.
And part of what the difficulty of this band is that we're just all very busy people. So between children and traveling and work and grading and grading, getting us all in one room is quite difficult.
Yeah.
So I think we're always looking for different ways that we can combine these different elements. So sometimes we do more just like improv drone shows, and then we've kind of got some different versions of our compositions that we play depending on who we can get together at the time.
Yeah. Terry Riley. I read on the event description, his strain of minimalism was a distinctly West Coast strain of minimalism, exploring spiritual and perceptual themes more overtly than, say, Philip Glass. What are the spiritual and perceptual themes here, or how does this relate to the spiritual or to the perceptual in a way that, say, Philip Glass doesn't as much?
I think Terry Riley is a psychedelic icon. I mean, I think he's closer to that. I mean, I think Philip Glass's music has probably been taken up in that regard here and there, but and I also think Philip Glass is more preoccupied with creating notated compositions in the 60s and 70s. I mean, a lot of it's for his ensemble. And it is predominantly using these kind of fixed additive rhythms where everything is in these 8th note patterns going up and down. And so there's even though both of them were influenced heavily by Indian music, Philip Glass, what he does is there's something a bit more elemental in terms of the way he uses notation to kind of structure, 20-minute, 30-minute minimal composition. Riley, I think, is, you know, I mean, as a soloist, he's you know, more of an improviser. And some of my favorite work of his, like Shri Camel, is a work that is, you know, doesn't involve notation, at least to my knowledge. So I think that lends itself to different kinds of musical forms. Even the keyboard study, again, it's like this sort of experimental work, or you can play it like in any different kind of combination. You can use these or use those cells, but it's fairly open-ended in terms of what it's trying to do. There's no specified duration.
Yeah, that being what you're performing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mariel, although she didn't play sax in the keyboard study number 2, there was also an improvised E set, wasn't it? Which did involve Mariel playing sax, and I have some footage of that too.
Yeah.
Mariel, when she was posting about the event, she explained, with much of Riley's more recent music, because I mean, as you highlighted, you had just seen Riley perform the previous year.
Yeah.
With much of Riley's more recent music and performances, you need to be ready to be taken into a different way of being when you listen to them, and to accept the combination of gentleness, naivety, and a sense of wonder that radiates through his work. And that's what Mariel was saying, which reminds me of some of like our earlier conversation about modes of being and about being affected. You know, it's a fact of life that we're constantly affecting and being affected.
Sure.
And of course, most people would say they find music affective. They're affected by music. So this performance, the Terry Riley performance that we can hear, is obviously quite different from the record that you're releasing on Thursday. Was Terry Riley something that, you know, an individual that you'd all been influenced by, and that you thought, well, let's do something different. It's different from what we normally do, but we respect it, and let's do it in our own way.
I think it started more with Mike and Mariel's obsession and playing this together, and then they told us they were doing it and added the rest.
Yeah. So that's one of the most exciting things about E. Like, for me, kind of just observing like the entity of E, the fact that it can kind of morph, and it is always collaborative. So you and Mariel are part of E, are excited about this, and then any other parts of E that are as excited and available, plus
or enlisted.
Well, you seem excited.
Oh, that's great. No, it's a really, really great piece. It's wonderful, but it's just physically difficult.
It's a completely different kind of playing than, say, the 10-minute improvisation that we did before. I mean, that was open and involved Meredith doing this kind of slow amplified drum beat, and I think it was just two elements: Mariel playing saxophone and I was playing this pocket piano synthesizer. And there it's just, I mean, you're kind of floating in this space, and physically you're open. I mean, if you feel tired, you can sort of loosen up and sort of let something happen. And with the Terry Riley, I mean, the composition essentially asks for everyone to get on this track and to stay on it.
Yeah.
It's a work of experimental art. I mean, it's something that it's not designed to sound slick or, you know, or be played perfectly. The recordings that have been made of it, I mean, people have done overdubs, and there's a beautiful recording that has tons of reverb, and it's like these kind of pianos that are fusing the sound together. There's a lot of ways in which to go about it, but it's a completely different style of playing. And I think that we just wanted to, I don't know, somewhat masochistically give ourselves a challenge of trying to do this thing that in some ways matches our aesthetics, but is very difficult to play. In
our compositions or our drones, you know, if one of us kind of gets off, we can eventually find each other again. This isn't like find your way back. This is just get back on track.
Just catch up.
Just catch up.
Everyone else is sprinting ahead. The only option is to catch up. You can't take a detour.
Or stop and then start there.
Right.
Yeah. Even catch up.
In this performance, we're just fusing together. We're not really, at no point were we really thinking like this is going to be something that we can synchronize. I think that we decided a frayed but still kind of, you know, flowing performance was what this piece would become when you have three people doing it. And that that kind of organicism was, but the task itself leaves very little room for, Mike or Meredith or whoever to sort of do something. I mean, you're a part of this object.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's part of the fun of it.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Putting yourself into this thing, and, it's a sport.
And thinking about different modes of being and different modes of being together. There's more being in unity in this particular e-performance. It's not complete synchronicity, but there are people working really hard and doing something together and becoming this one very regimented thing, which is like demonstrating a different possibility perhaps than what E's drones are demonstrating as being possible socially. Yeah.
I mean, I think
that's a good point.
What Marielle talks about as being this universal conscious. I think that it's an immersive medium, and there's always this sense that when the sound is flooding this space, that it's kind of expanding or breaking down the walls of it.
Yeah.
And I actually think Zach's visuals, this like mysterious psychedelic cube, it consolidates it, because I think there's the relationship between the two is totally undefined. We discussed the piece a bit beforehand with Zach, but I think we left it fairly open because we wanted it to have a certain vitality on its own.
You wanted Kissanales to be Kissanales.
Exactly. We need to give him space to be mysterious.
So you said about the black cube. Here's you.
Yeah.
Here is visual evidence of you facing each other. Yeah. And there's the projection.
Right.
And Zach is over there. And Zach is in a massive black cube.
It's probably a 6x6 or 8x8 cube that he built that day.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
he's a skilled.
He's a carpenter.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I noticed things would happen to my house once in a while. And I deduced that was But so it wouldn't. It's not exactly. It's not that much smaller than this room. Would you say? I mean, smaller than this room, but not that much.
Not that much.
So with Zach inside it, and so.
Was he peeping out the top?
No, there was a little hole.
Okay.
And my video camera and I were like right, just to the left of the hole.
Okay.
So the video is almost a Zach's eye view, a Kissanali's eye view.
Yeah.
So a seg back to Thursday's show in the release. Not only will Kissanali's be there, but the artwork for the record is also Zach. Is also him.
And Marielle.
And Marielle as well.
Yeah,
I haven't seen this yet, but we can see it here.
Yes.
Oh, there it is. Now I can see it.
Marielle drew the front.
Okay.
She drew this. This is another enigmatic drawing that I just loved. And as I understand it, Zach helped sort of put this into a tape design along the lines of the template. So he did the design layout and all of that.
This is a bit like the peephole.
Right.
That Kissanali's has.
Yeah, it's like a keyhole or like a floating carpet or a tongue and a mouth or something. It's this and that.
It's called Ark. Why Ark? Like, are you like Noah's Ark or like a narrative arc or both of those things or neither of those things?
Tell him about the poem.
I was given a poem by Ronald Johnson called Ark.
Ah, okay.
I don't know if you know this poet at all.
I don't know this poem.
It's a long poem. I've spent some time with it on and off, and I think, adopting that term seemed apt to me. It's certainly not a religious term in the way that we use it. It's like it's like a voyage. It's a place amidst a flood, and we often think of sound as kind of flooding us, and the ark is there. I don't know. It's like the place to be
in the flood. In a crisis.
Yeah.
in the ark. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I liked the way the three letters looked,
especially alongside these other two letters, the 5 letters together.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's all Zach's doing, setting that up.
discover that Arc arose from the crisis logic and the reader one-day symposium that Sam Gould organized and curated. Did Sam reach out to you to say, I've organized this symposium, the perfect way for it to end would be with E?
Yeah.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, Sam asked us to play, and we, because of our schedules, which are all complicated, I mean, it was on a work day, we arrived late in the afternoon, the day of the performance.
I think it was at like 5 or something. It was a really strange time and place.
But he had stuff going on. He had stuff going all day, and there were people printing posters, and we arrived, and this is right after the election. And so you can recall the mood, probably.
Yeah.
It was surreal and very dark and hard, and I think this was at the background of the whole event, and it raises this interesting question of what music are you going to play when this is going on? What music is adequate to the way? And when I listen to this recording, I still think about that moment. It's a field recording, and it feels very live. It feels, sort of spur of the moment, and it's, there's all kinds of, it's a wholly improvised thing. I mean, we had only the loosest idea of what we'd do beforehand. And it ended up being very empty, very drony and very empty. And it was, I'm not sure why the music ended up that way, but it seemed like once I had listened to the recording that Mariel had made, it seemed to capture the mood, and I wasn't sure exactly how it did it. But this is how the whole thing ended up being a tape in the first place, is that this was kind of an idea. Sam had asked, would you want to play? And I think we sort of were like, oh, sure, of course we'll play. I mean, Sam's a good friend, and we had been looking for things to collaborate on. And this was one of those things where you show up, you do something, and then it suddenly strikes you later. Like, this was kind of...
What the significance of that
was.
And
it's not the most virtuosic performance or anything like that. It's a very kind of loose and empty thing. But it did seem to, for me, it consolidates that memory.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the thing that we've left out of this is the space where we played it. It was this really beautiful, amazing, brutalist concrete building.
Reverberant brutalist studio space.
That's what I wrote down about it.
That's how Michael refers to it in the description of Arc.
And we found out after we played that there were a lot of people who were locked out behind big doors, and they sat outside and they listened, not inside the building, but outside of the room where we played.
Space.
Yes.
It was an unintended consequence of setting up where we did. I mean, when you set up to play in a printmaking studio, there's no stage. So we're put one keyboard in between, two printmaking stations and another one over here, and we were sort of in front of the door. So the door had been closed, and fortunately, Derek, who had done this incredible sound system, also had positioned speakers out in the hallways, which also have this reverberant, brutalist concrete. So there were people walking around and hanging out there. They got a full sense of what the music was, but they weren't in the actual room where the recording took place.
Yeah, well, they were with some massive speakers.
Yes.
And so snacks. They had snacks on the other side of the door.
Speakers and snacks.
Yeah, there were snacks. I forgot about snacks.
So I was going to say, snacks are important.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm sure on the credits of the tape, it highlights live mixing by Derek Maxwell, but I'm glad that you've already begun to elaborate on what the nature of this live mixing was, because Derek Maxwell set up large stacks of speakers in the style of a Jamaican sound system. Yeah. And there's additional speakers in the stairwells, even.
The other thing that I think was pretty magical about the space was, I don't know if you've seen these posters that are all around town that say love in like 10 different languages and then a blank line.
Yes.
Didn't Derek design those?
Yes.
I think, he designed those. And so they had been printing them all day in the studio. So all of those things were hanging from the ceiling above us.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is an important component. We've been talking about the importance of space. And I love the About Arc, I'm not sure how to describe it, manifesto description that will accompany the tape?
Yeah.
Will this
It's on there.
ship be in the tape? Yeah.
Yeah,
Here is the tape.
you can read snippets of it by through the clear plastic.
I can read snippets of it from a piece of paper as well.
Sure.
So it begins, the drone is an arc. It is not a negative space. It is a positive void. And that's intriguing, and there's a lot more to it, but we were talking about the importance of space, and we were talking about physical space. And now it's not a negative space, it is a positive void. Could you elaborate?
The drone it creates a space, and it seems like it's something that's there, and that it's not a song. I mean, one way you might define it is to say that it's not a regular song with the usual beat and chords and a melody. But it's also its own thing. And it's a highly paradoxical thing because it's sort of just, you can create a drone, and I think when you spend a long time playing very little material, as he has, as we have these rehearsals where we're really just playing a few notes and disciplining ourselves to play as little as possible, it seems as though you realize how easily a drone can become boring. And actually the effort is to allow it to become a void that is fascinating, that kind of is magnetic, and that takes you in. And there's no recipe or way of doing that. There's no formula, there's no, particular songwriting techniques, at least that we've found. It's like a paradox of the mind in terms of how you play. And not to let your mind get in the way.
Yeah, and once you finally get into that positive void, if you will, you can't think about it too much, or else you're out of it.
Yeah.
Then.
So maybe it's easier to describe things not to do, like don't think about it too much.
But don't not think about
But
it.
don't not think about it.
Yeah.
In what sense is the void positive?
I don't know. How would you say the
It's
void's
not
positive?
empty.
Yeah.
It's full.
How did it feel creating a positive void at the Crisis Symposium in that context? You were saying you listened back to it and it sounded empty, but at the same time it's simultaneously the positive void.
I don't know. There's you said it was empty, or it's not empty. It's full, and then. And then I had said earlier that it was empty, and I think that's sort of, there's your paradox, right? I mean, it's like you can use different words. None of the words really get it, right?
Right.
You could say it's empty. You could say it's blank. You could say it's full. You could say it's just there. I mean, there's like all these different words, and they're necessarily going to be a bit imperfect. There is a sense, you always have this intuitive sense if it's working or not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible for all the few words we use in the band. When you're done with one, everybody can look at each other, and we all kind of agree, like, that was sort of good.
Yeah.
Or that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's
consensus.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some kind of harmonious sense. Now it's not a perfect harmony, but I think, I don't know, you're an expert on the intuition, Meredith, so
I'm not in it.
I do feel like wouldn't you say there's a kind of exercise of the intuition?
Definitely. And I think for me, it's like a very particular experience of time, because most of our drones are improvised. There's something about this completely out of timeness that I really enjoy about it.
We're sort of moving around some of these paradoxes of why we even care about this music in the first place, is that we're trying to create things that are a bit fascinating because they're so paradoxical. Oh, that's not a song. Like, what is that?
Yeah. But it affects people, though, and that's that's meaningful.
And it's very emotional.
Yeah.
I think,
and something we talk about a lot is our compositions and not wanting them to be like have too many swells or too much emotion, and I think Mike always says it's wallpaper.
Yeah.
And so I think of our compositions more as like a static wallpaper, and then there are things that can go on around the wallpaper, but the wallpaper needs to fit together well.
Yeah.
Whereas I think our drones, I think of them more as it's kind of cheesy, but I think of them more as a hike, like getting at a good pace and going on a hike. And if you get off of that good pace, like you might get anxious, the whole thing might fall apart, you might hurt yourself, but if you just keep going and allow these things around you to change, but you just keep going, it tends to work. So I actually feel like there's more narrative or more movement actually in the drones than in our compositions.
Establishing a common plane of immanence.
Yes.
So, which is, I'm quoting Deleuze there,
Sure.
Practical Philosophy, Spinoza and us. Meredith and I are both big fans of Spinoza. Maybe Michael is too. Do you like Spinoza?
Yes.
Yeah. Spinoza is my favourite philosopher. And when I was reading about Arc and listening to the record that you're releasing, I found myself really wanting to reread Spinoza and Us, which is the final part of Deleuze, Practical Philosophy. Because there, Deleuze is talking about what it means to be in the middle of Spinoza. He goes back to what a body is for Spinoza, and I was also aware, Meredith, that you focus on theories of the subject and theories of value.
Yes.
So I was thinking, I'm looking forward to bringing all of this together with Meredith. So a body for Spinoza is defined by two things. It's relations of motion and rest, and also by its affective capacity. And music kept on coming up as Deleuze is describing what it means to be in the middle of Spinoza. And being in the middle of Spinoza seems significant to me because it's all about a mode of living and a mode of interacting. And I thought that might be a fruitful way of, some fruitful terminology to think about what's happening with these performances. So music comes in when Deleuze is reflecting on a musical form. It's a complex relation between speeds and slowness of sound particles. It is not just a matter of music, but of how to live. He goes on. So he's using music to describe how to live via Spinoza. It is by speed and slowness that one slips in among things, that one connects with something else. One never commences, one never has a tabula rasa, one slips in, enters in the middle, one takes up or lays down rhythms. So, especially, and rhythms is important for you too. So, all I've done so far is just quote some Deleuze. Is that making, so what connections are happening? What connections does that suggest to you?
Well, the Deleuze, for those of you listening,
the
Deleuze that he's talking about is in response to reading Spinoza, and in particular Spinoza's Ethics. And actually ethics is a word that comes up a lot when we're talking about our music, or not a lot, but it has come up. And so a couple things. The thing that I really love about Spinoza is that there's no mind-body split for him. But also that he values intuition above any other form of intelligence, but what intuition for him is pretty much a completely communal form of thought. And in this phase of capitalism, we tend to think of intuition as the most individual thing, the thing you buy when you go pay $20 to breathe in a yoga studio. Which I do and enjoy. But he situates intuition as like a knowledge that is ultimately a shared form of knowledge, and it's the highest form of knowledge, and it's the most ethical form of knowledge. And he talks a lot, and you were discussing this about like the ability to act and be acted upon. And so an ethical way of being is remaining open to be acting upon without giving up your power, basically, and without trampling on someone else's power. So that's basically what an ethical subject position is for Spinoza, and that's what I think playing a drone is also, is allowing people to go in the way that they want to go and listening, and at the same time not disrupting.
He also says, inspired by Spinoza and the idea of ethology, which obviously there's a root with ethos and ethics. How do individuals enter into composition with one another in order to form a higher individual? And to some extent, any band or any musical collective is that. If we're thinking about, what what a body is, and then we could see a band, or or ears as a body. Or we could obviously see like a nation as a body, or we can see
an
like
ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there's these different ways of thinking about how bodies interact, and when you're a bunch of human beings creating a drone, and then there's also an audience that's involved in this ecosystem too. Reading it through this lens, it kind of demonstrates here this is something that's possible. Like, this is maybe an ethical way of like being together as bodies that is possible and at odds with other ways.
And I would say the one frequent misconception about this kind of thinking is that it means anything goes.
Right.
Because someone could easily respond and say, well, it just sounds like anything can be anything and anyone can do anything. And that's not the case at all, which is what makes it so kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
I think with this music, someone might say, well, this music is very easy to make because you're not worrying about exactly, what chords you're going to play here and there. But actually, we probably discard 80% or more of the material that we write.
When we've tried to write songs, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I think we've tried to go in that direction, and then, I think that it's part of the idea of the ethics of this whole practice is that you're interdependent and you're in motion, and your agency is there's not a sense of traditional sort of self-centered subjective agency.
Yes.
It's very distributed and diffuse. But what still remains is a sense that you really want it to be good, and that you want to create something that does hold itself together. And Deleuze, in What is Philosophy, talks about creating something with consistency. And he talks about the importance of technique. Elsewhere, he mentions the importance of sobriety. All these terms, I think, go back to a sense that no matter how open-ended your philosophy is and how interconnected it is, once you break down all those boundaries, then it seems as if you leave yourself open to be able to create and care for something that is materially and physically there among the people who are sharing it. And that's actually very challenging to do. For me, what's so helpful is that it pulls the self away. Taking a solo is not about, hey, this is me. Mike is here now. It's not about that so much as it is about building an ornament on top of what's there and not blocking what's there.
Yeah, doing your bit within this entity or system.
Yeah.
Making the puzzle and playing within the puzzle at the same time.
Yeah, maybe in some other traditional musical forms. It goes back to like the musical genius. There's like one person, like, I'm going to create this thing, I am the artist and I'm going to create this thing.
Right.
But given that we are interconnected, is this drone music kind of reminding us, it sounds odd, it sounds alien, but at the same time, is it reminding us of what we are?
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's a intensification.
Yeah.
And if we think about, we mentioned the genius and the sort of traditional conception of a composer or artist or great poet.
Yeah.
There are so many, I think, ways in which capitalism perpetuates that.
Yeah.
We just think about
invested in doing so.
Right, and with works that we consider to be, resistant and exciting. In the world of popular music, there's a way in which branding or the identity of a singular artist controls how we see, for example, the work of, Kanye West. He's an example of an artist who does completely fascinating work, which is highly collaborative. And sometimes that collaboration is talked about. But there's a way in which the kind of boxing in of the work that happens in the album form, in the touring form, in branding, in just the commerce of art. It lends itself towards the reduction of that kind of complex, interconnected world into the agency and intentions of a single actor. So there's so many ways in which that, even if we don't call them a genius, actually people do call Kanye a genius. But we also know that these are very collaborative, multi-dimensional works.
Right.
And there's a way in which I think the drone, we're, in our tiny periphery of the culture industry that we are, and we're also bound up with capitalism. We're trying to think through those issues and sort of exercise them. And I think there's dissent in there somewhere. If it's not explicit, we're not writing lyrics about what all this is all about. We're just kind of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So speaking of lyrics, and we already highlighted that some vocals are being recorded as we speak.
Yes.
But there are not only are there not lyrics about capitalism and Spinoza, but there's not lyrics at all. Or how would you? So other lyrics. How would you describe the vocal component? That's
for the new record.
For the new record, there are lyrics in the making.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I don't think any of us want the emphasis to be on the meaning of the lyrics.
How about the vocal delivery?
So Crystal has a gorgeous voice, and she runs it through different effects, and she's really using her voice as an instrument and adding it as another layer of instrumentation instead of as the thing or something.
Yeah. Speaking of, we should acknowledge that we are currently being affected by
some future drone musician.
Yeah, exactly. So a bunch of kids that are using their voices to contribute to the interview.
Yeah, Crystal has an incredible way of singing, and it's an element. When we asked her to play bass, Meredith reminded me. She's like, "Oh yeah, Crystal's a good singer," and she played in this band Brute Heart, which is played I think a few years ago, and sort of long-standing Minneapolis band, and music that they wrote, which we really like and admire.
Yeah.
And so in rehearsal when she was doing the bass lines, can you play bass and sing at the same time? And she was, and I think we moved towards incantation sort of style of singing, where in lines with bands like some of the drone records made by bands like Coil that Marielle and I were listening to, and we were thinking about how do you have vocals that aren't really the centerpiece of what the song is, but are there as another element, and as a kind of ghosted thing. So these are recordings that we're working on for a full-length record.
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes complete sense. What you're saying in light of everything else we've been saying, because as soon as you have a singer in a band, then the idea of the front person comes in again.
Sure.
And then the band is just like, no matter what is actually happening, often if people see a singer and then other musicians, it's like the front person and like the backing band, which is absolutely not what this would be. So trying to find a way to kind of have the band still be what it, there's a lot of theory and intuition behind, in the sense of the word that you were using earlier, behind why the band is like this, and so the tentative manner in which the vocal component is being integrated sounds fascinating. Will there be a vocal component at the release show performance?
Yes.
Yeah. And will you be playing your compositions and or drones and or what will you be doing?
Definitely our compositions. I don't know if we're going to add any drones in there also.
Yeah, I think it's not often that we get to play the full 5-piece.
Yeah.
And we're right now trying to sort of refine these compositions we wrote for the full-length recording. So I think we're going to take the opportunity to play those.
So Deleuze says that it's more likely that musicians will find themselves Spinozists than that professional philosophers will. And when he doesn't just say that about musicians, but he does say that about musicians. The meaning of that, what Deleuze says about musicians finding themselves Spinozists, to me, he seems to be saying there's something about creating music that makes one realize this thing about what it is to be human, and maybe not just human, but also like a body, like a being, in amongst, in interaction with others. Again, maybe as academics, do you have ideas about what music is and what music is in relation to society? That
Mike just wrote a whole book on this.
Yeah, right. Actually, yes. What's the title? It's in my notes somewhere.
The title is Deep Refrains, Music, Philosophy, and the Ineffable.
Yeah.
And Deleuze is one among many philosophers in that book. He and his partner Guattari are the last chapter. And he shares company with another French philosopher, Jean Paulevich, and then some German philosophers, first Schopenhauer, with a little Nietzsche, who is very influenced by Schopenhauer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then Ernst Bloch, a kind of Marxist, mystical thinker of the 20th century, who associated music with utopia, and then Theodor Adorno, a foundational thinker for the Frankfurt School. And so the book is trying to put all of these philosophers in conversation with each other about this question.
Nice, yeah. Is Wagner in there? Nietzsche on Wagner? Nietzsche contra Wagner?
There's a little bit of Wagner. I mean, the music that's in the book comes up occasionally in order to sort of animate whatever music is at hand. And each philosopher has their own preferences, their own go-to examples, Wagner being one for some of them and not for others.
Okay, so I've been hypothesizing about what Deleuze might have to say about E. What might Adorno or Nietzsche or any of the other philosophers that are having a conversation in your to-be-published book, what contribution might they make to this conversation were they here?
The first thing to say is that these philosophers are European philosophers. They're conservative about what music that they engage with and what they listen to. But there's a strong sense, I think, among readers of this philosophy that they could have expanded the gate much wider in terms of the kinds of works that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
A lot of my book is really reconstructing their ideas in relationship to the music that they listen to, because I want to connect the dots fairly tightly about the kinds of claims that they're making.
Yes.
But if you're reading a philosophy to be inspired, to go do things, there's no limit, really. I mean, you can be a Schopenhauerian and make drone music. You can be a Pythagorean and obsessed with numbers. I mean, this is like kind of Lamont Young was interested in this sort of stuff. And so, from there, the sort of possibilities are limitless. I think,
And I just want to point out that while we're talking about all this philosophy stuff and we do this for a living and really enjoy our jobs, I think the band is actually like a really different thing for all of us. We're not sitting around in practice and being, talking about lofty ideas. It's actually because it's so...
it's a contrast, does that make sense?
Yeah, it's such a contrast to what we do, and it's really non-narrative music. And I know for me, I teach 3 classes a semester and I lecture most of the time. And I feel like it's just content coming out of my head. And so I really love the emptiness, and I know Travis feels the same way.
And
but you being the same person, then you can think about the significance of it.
But experientially it's a very different thing.
And I think a huge part of the reason we do this band is Meredith and I mean, we both have played in a lot of bands. And that's part of who we are. As much as we are academics, it's also like we feel equally at home just being at a show and being at a DIY space. And I think that for us it's about people. Like playing that is an opportunity to do things with people and to experience things.
I can relate. Given the choice between spending time reading Deleuze and Nietzsche and whomever describing what human interactions are or could be, and having human interactions of like a certain variety, I would prefer having human interaction.
Part of the caution is that words have incredible power to explain and to interpret things. And there's we keep going back to this term ethics, but one of the things, it's like learning when not to talk. I mean, it's something that when writing music, I realized like a lot of times you just need to play it again and not talk about it. And I think, I recently taught this famous Susan Sontag essay against interpretation, where everybody wanted to debate, like, what is this? Is there a moment when interpretations go haywire, and you're kind of, you begin to sort of foist things upon the work, and you're not. And people say, oh, like the only thing you don't want to do about this drone is explain it. It should just be its own thing. And I think we're, very serious about that. I think there's, we're kind of, you play and we don't sort of say too much about it. Yeah. But then when we're teaching and it's somebody else's stuff, it's a different kind of thing. You're saying, well, you play something for a bunch of students, and then you see like some people are engaging and some people don't. Then you sort of use words. You say, well, let's think about this. Let's listen to this part, and let's talk about the history that goes into this artist's work, and let's learn some more about the genre. And then there's real engagement and excitement. And I think that in some ways it's like two different activities. I don't know how that feels for you, Simon, because I know you're a musician, and then you do these. You're also a teacher, and a scholar, so I don't know how you see these things fitting together, but I mean, we're always trying to keep them separate in a certain way, and I don't know.
I'm always trying to get people to talk about what they've done.
I will say that performing this music, the joy of being in a room with people and playing this type of music is really a similar type of joy as to when I'm teaching, and it's like everyone is on that really communal, like we're all making this thing together. The feeling is quite similar.
Music as a medium, it's all about affective emotional intensity. I mean, that's so much of what it's doing, and any time that's there's the risk of being ashamed. And I think that there's something, being open about that has value.
Sam, your friend Sam, reflects in the essay that accompanies the conference. Crisis brings out the best in us. Unlike personal hardship, crisis is collective. We may not all agree on goals or tactics, but we are all in it, living in a complex association of subjective realities experienced within crisis, more on the surface than we normally allow for. That's the opening paragraph of his essay, and there's some other salient bits, I think, too. But hearing the beginning of Sam's essay there, and the emphasis as the essay develops is on what crisis might allow us to do. Crisis might allow us, through careful reading of the social landscape, to recognize our shared resources, perhaps to facilitate more of a shift of thinking. We are interconnected, and we can create these more powerful collectives. And a crisis can be something that jumpstarts that. What are your thoughts again on this particular e-performance, and on in general, but maybe this particular e-performance, and how you felt about the coldness of it and your awareness of it being a moment of crisis in light of like what Sam was trying to do with the symposium as a whole?
I think in the impact of that election, there was a sort of emotional overflow. I mean, people were taking to the streets. Yeah. And there was a militant sense that for a huge variety of reasons, the result affirmed many things that were the kind of darkest instincts of humanity. Yeah. And I think that was a kind of first time in my life where I had experienced something that I think earlier in history people had become quite accustomed to in many different situations. I think the first sense that one has is a sense of privilege, that to be born without feeling that as a consistent element of one's political life.
I think the emphasis on things coming to the surface in a manner that isn't normally allowed for is crucial here. You notice something that wouldn't be as evident before, but then it was there.
Yeah,
so the
it was
crisis
absolutely there.
can therefore become the situation that the catalyst.
It can become the catalyst, but we also have to make sure it doesn't become a new state of exception for more fascism.
I think one of the challenges too is that, it was a small art event.
Yeah.
And I think I often remind myself, politics takes place on the scale of millions and billions of people.
Yeah.
And I'm wary of sort of putting too much faith in some kind of powers of political dissent, and as we were joking about not having lyrics where we're sort of political things. But ways of life that Sam's work engages, this sort of the kinds of social worlds that he seeks to incorporate in all of his work.
Those posters, for example, have a massive effect.
They're wonderful.
Yeah, I have one in my office.
Yeah.
And I think...
I have one on my green screen.
Yeah. And I think that, one of the ways in which we not just cope but strategize for better political futures is through our communities. It cannot all be done, I think, mediated by, the mass scale of Facebook and everybody is sort of collecting New York Times ideas in their heads because, certain kind of media outlets. I think that has to be supplemented by smaller scale forms of banding together during crisis and having those conversations. So, but I always feel like there has to be some modesty about what exactly that is capable of doing.
I think so too. Yeah.
I don't think that our performance was changing any worlds, but it made my life feel a little bit better at the time.
Well, I think it's great that you're modestly saying that, but of course our role is changing all the time.
Sure.
And so, so long as we're aware that we're not claiming like exceptionality.
Sure.
Then yes, it is. And
sure.
So with that having been said, I hope that lots of people come on Thursday and have their roles changed in a minor way. By E and Weta and Half Tramp and Kissin' Alleys
and PV Glob
and PV
Glob.
Yes. It's Matt Wacker's solo analog electronics project. He's absolutely brilliant. Mm-hmm. He'll do I think probably a 30-minute set, and then he's going to jam with us on a new song we have. So it'll be, I guess, 6 people. Yeah. So things might,
You're not going to become members of Weta on this occasion?
We're not becoming members of Weta, sadly.
No, unfortunately not.
That would be great. That on a future occasion.
Yeah, hopefully.
Cool. Okay. Well, I can't wait for it. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, it's great.
Indeed. Yeah. This has been Back to the City. I've been Simon Calder. See you on Thursday at the Eagles. Thank you very much, Michael and Meredith from E, for joining us today.
Thank you.